All right, LSU announced a addition in the spring portal window. If you remember, Brian Kelly said after spring practice, I don't think we're going to be shopping actively in the transfer portal, but if something comes available, we'll look into that. So it wasn't a concerted effort from LSU, but they did have room on the roster. Dylan Battle moved on into the transfer portal after just one spring at LSU. That's the defensive lineman that Bo Davis identified, wanted to bring in. They did. Bo Davis left right before spring practice. Battle goes through one spring. He's moving on. But you had a spot, and they decided to take a player, and Bernard Gooden is that player. Defensive lineman, a native of Montgomery, Alabama, was at South Florida for the last 2 seasons initially, played at Wake Forest for a couple of years. You're talking about a kind of a lean defensive tackle at just over 300 pounds, not one of these big 330-pound, roadblocks in the middle. He's got some positional versatility. If you look at the tape from Gooden at South Florida, he plays a lot at defensive tackle. He plays sometimes out on the edge at defensive end in some situations where they're getting after the passer a little bit. So he was statistically very strong as a junior last year. He played in 13 games, had 11 starts, 35 tackles, and here's the number that really stands out: 10 tackles for loss at South Florida with a sack and a half. Kyle Williams actively wants his defensive tackles to get up the field. There are coaches defensively that want their defensive tackles to hold the point of attack, to make sure that they're not giving any ground, and to let those linebackers behind them go play. And Kyle Williams, I'm certain, understands, and I'm not trying to show you that I know more about defensive tackle play than Kyle Williams. Sometimes I talk and I'm like, does that sound wrong? What I'm telling you is Kyle Williams understands that that's an important part of defensive tackle, but I know for a fact Kyle Williams wants his defensive tackles getting vertical and getting into the backfield and making plays. He doesn't want them to be a passive part of the defense. He wants them to be an aggressive and playmaking part of the defense. And I think that's the potential that you add in Gooden. Like, you don't ever know if things are going to translate. LSU has taken 2 FCS corners in the last 4 years. One could really play, one was overmatched. LSU has taken corners from the Big 12 and the ACC. The one from the Big 12 could really play. The one from the ACC could not. LSU has taken offensive linemen from different levels. And you look at Miles Frazier coming over from FIU. He can handle himself. You've seen linemen come in that can't. So I don't know how much this translates from USF to LSU. Not certain on that. But it's worth a look, because really you're adding him as a depth piece. LSU's pretty good from a bodies perspective at defensive tackle. Jacobian Guillory's coming back for his 6th year. He is a placeholder. He is a guy that sets the point of attack. He is a guy that absorbs space. Ahmad Breaux is more of a guy that is smaller and can be quicker and maybe make some plays in the backfield as he matures in his 2nd year. Dominic McKinley, ideally, in terms of his ceiling, can do both. He's 6'5", he's 305 pounds, up to 310 pounds, and he can set the point of attack. He can also get up the field. Sydir Mitchell is just a load. He's another one that's like Jacobian Guillory. And that's 4 guys right there that you feel like can play, and then you add Sean Washington to the mix as well, and then you've got 3 freshmen in Zion Williams, Brandon Brown, and Walter Mathis, and you add Gooden in. So altogether, that group that you expect to field on August 1st, Guillory, Breaux, McKinley, Mitchell, Washington, that's 5 that return, 3 freshmen, Williams, Brown, and Mathis, and then you add Gooden. That's 9 guys basically at defensive tackle. You can shuffle them around. Gio Paez could play both. Gooden can probably play both. I'm not trying to pigeonhole these guys to, hey, you can only line up at tackle. But as for guys that can play tackle, that's 9. That's enough. So do you have the right mix? Do you have enough variation in skill set to be an effective defensive front? I think the answer is yes. I pretty much know what Jacobian Guillory is. Jacobian Guillory is big, physical, strong, hard to move. That's not going to change. I thought he had a great fall last year before the Achilles injury. How well he looks moving on from an Achilles injury at 330 pounds, that remains to be seen. But if he's healthy, I know what he is. I feel like you've got a pretty good chance that either Breaux or McKinley is an above-average SEC player. It's possible both are. It's possible neither is. But I feel like you've got a pretty good chance that one of those guys can really play. And then there was a lot of buzz about Sydir Mitchell in the spring. That's all spring practice stuff. And as y'all have heard me talk a million times about, this is optimism season, baby. Everybody looks good in the spring. Everybody's in great shape in the summer. Everybody's doing the best they've ever done in the fall. And then you go out there and the first time you lose, you got to fire everybody. But this is optimism season. And there's a lot of buzz about Sydir Mitchell. So he's a big physical dude. And then you take Gooden in the hopes that you've got an older guy that's played a lot of snaps, that's got some quickness, and can be a complement to Breaux. So if you look at the different versatility levels, like Guillory and Mitchell, big, physical, point of attack, strong, hard to move. Breaux and Gooden, leaner, quicker, can make some plays in the backfield. McKinley, hopefully a superstar. We'll see. That's the kind of what's been put in his lap as a 5-star number 1 player in the state. Sack at the end of the season against Oklahoma, all that. Then Sean Washington, I think, is a depth piece. But he's old, and he's big, and he's strong. So to me, this is a more functional group. I've contended this forever, really. LSU's best teams have elite defensive line play. Elite defensive line play. You go back to the championship team of 2003, Lavallee, Spears, Hill, Williams. Like, that's elite stuff. You look at 7 with Dorsey. That's the best player on defense in the country. You even look at 11 with Brockers and Logan and Montgomery and Mingo, and like Josh Downs is a good player on that team. But like the front guys, Brocker and Logan, those are NFL dudes in the middle of the interior line. And then you even look at 19. It didn't work out in the pros, but turn that tape on in 2019 and see what Tyler Shelvin was doing to people. He was wrecking dudes. And I don't think LSU has played to that level in years past. I thought Mekhi Wingo had a nice year. And you can look at some individual guys and go, okay, that was pretty good. But it's not elite. And I don't know if this is elite. There's some ceiling there with the younger guys. And if one of the or two of those guys kind of pops, then maybe you've got it. But you've got to work towards that. And I'm never, ever, ever going to fault the program for taking on a big guy that can move. And I know for sure that when you look at Bernard Gooden, he's big and he can move. The tape abundantly shows that. Whether or not he can move as well when Clemson's center hits him in the shoulder pads remains to be seen. Whether he moves as well when you got to go to Oxford remains to be seen. But he can move, and he's big. So I think this is a quality ad. They weren't aggressively looking for anything. This is not an emergency plug-and-play. If Bernard Gooden gets here and it just doesn't quite work out, you've still got 8 other guys that I've listed and 4 guys that you've seen play. So I think this is good news. I don't think it's program-altering, but you got a scholarship available. Beats dressing out a walk-on and giving him some cash, as great a story as that could be. Bring somebody in that might be able to help. And I think there's a chance Bernard Gooden could. I'm not here to be the guy who breaks down a ton of tape and gives you a projected stat line for every, y'all know my role here. But I can speak to the functionality of a roster and what history tells us about LSU's program. And they've got to continue to work on that defensive line. Kyle Williams has got his chance to get his hands on this. He obviously vouched for this guy. I understand why, because the stat line that I see from USF mirrors what he wants his guys to be at LSU. So we'll see if that works out. Bernard Gooden joins the mix at LSU on the defensive line. All right, if you're looking for LSU football content, you can always find it at Hunt on LSU. Search wherever you find your podcast. Certainly search on YouTube. You subscribe to that channel. We certainly appreciate it. It makes life easy. It's all football all year round. If you're looking for LSU football right here in the end of April, when there's not a lot of LSU football, you can find it daily over there at Hunt on LSU. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.